Thanks, Lee. Now it's Monday morning, the 28th of March, and as usual, we go through the newspaper reviews, stories making headlines over the past week or so. We have Deputy Editor of the Mail and Guardian Online, Vareshini Pillay, to help us through these very, very heavy headlines. Thanks so much for coming in this morning. Shall we start with the Mail and Guardian? I think generally across the board, the Kretsche story grabbing the headlines. It's a whole mire and shocking web, really, of intelligence and counter-intelligence operatives. What's going on?
Well, you see, it really has all blown up into the open recently over the past week, because last week, of course, there was the murder of security don in Cape Town, Cyril Beerkus. That was on Monday. And Tuesday, there was a very dramatic sort of break-in into Retsche's house in the east of Johannesburg. And, you know, he was gone for 2 days. We couldn't find him, and now he's handed himself into cops. So the Mail and Guardian kind of did a whole thing about how there's actually been a bit of tension between the Hawks and the police about this case, and how there actually has been surveillance of the Hawks, unbeknownst to them, by certain people in the police. And this has just blown the kind of the lid wide open on the, as you say, the spy versus spy, this kind of thing that's going on within our law enforcement agencies, where Kretsche seems to have had control. He seems to have had bought or had certain officials in his pocket, and that's really quite frightening.
I think the Hawks were also quoted as saying that because of his deep pocket, and those were the words, that he could have bought some favor within the police structures. I mean, he had access to, or allegedly had access to, recordings while he was under investigation himself.
Exactly. I mean, a name that keeps coming up is former Gauteng criminal intelligence boss Joey Mombasa, who has since been moved out of that unit. In fact, in the Sunday newspapers, they wouldn't comment officially about this on Friday with the Mail and Guardian, but by Sunday, the spokesperson for the Hawks was saying that, it seems that he definitely does have people in the police in his pocket.
So are we inviting all these dark criminals? Because, I mean, Paul O'Sullivan as well, a man largely that we should thank for all these exposés, having to fight long and hard. It's not that you would assume if there's an international fugitive that South Africa would make it a point that that person is treated as hostile and that they're not welcome.
And seriously, in fact, it's a little bit disturbing that we need a vigilante like Paul O'Sullivan, a private investigator, a bit of a maverick, who's put his whole life, his whole world on the line to kind of fight this for the past 7 years, since he was head of security at Johannesburg Airport, when he first got tipped off about the Celebi corruption, our former top cop, Jackie Celebi. And he kind of brought that to book, and now he's fighting long and hard to uncover all the other murky mess he uncovered in our criminal underworld in this country, involving all kinds of, syndicates, organized crime, drug smuggling. It's actually terrifying. There's even allegations of human trafficking and so on being done by these people. And one would really hope that our law enforcement agencies can get their act together and stop this, instead of having to rely on sort of a vigilante private investigator like Paul O'Sullivan.
And I mean, with the raid now that the Hawks conducted on Kretsche's home, whether that kind of evidence can be submittable in court. And the scary part as well is that there's this things to do list. Potentially you must kill character one is gone, and Paul O'Sullivan was next.
And I mean, that's also a state prosecutor, I believe, on the list as well. It really is quite terrifying. There were some questions raised in some of the Sunday papers about the nature of those raids and whether it was strictly legal, if the correct procedures had been followed. But I see now that the Hawks released a statement this morning saying that they had followed the correct procedures. So we'll see how that plays out. Of course, Kretsche is in court today, the Magistrates Court, on allegations of fraud when he defrauded Liberty Life, claiming that he had cancer. And his former doctor has turned state witness.
Okay, this one we definitely is something that's
going
to keep
out of
our
a movie,
attention.
I swear.
It really sounds like a mafia movie indeed. Okay, and in the Sunday newspaper, or the Sunday Independent rather, knives out for Minister of Higher Education, Mr. Blade Nzimande.
Lots of imagery going on there, knives and blades.
Nice play on words. But again, the whole relationship that President Jacob Zuma has with this, the Gupta family and their involvement in business that either is aided or perceived to be assisted pretty much by Jacob Zuma. It's creating division as how this should be treated, particularly in the tripartite alliance.
And it's become one of those issues that, like you say, is dividing the alliance. And there's become more and more unhappiness about the fact that Blade has remained so quiet about what people are calling the Guptarization of our politics and our economy. And I think this is all part of a lot of the mess we're going to see before the local government elections. So we're going to get used to seeing this kind of back and forth between different factions within the alliance. In fact, fact, that was what how the South African Communist Party responded about that this morning, about this very article. But Blade Nzimande has come under fire for a long time before the Gupta kind of issue, particularly around the cars, the luxury cars he got as minister, the perception that he's receiving government kickbacks, he's settling into a nice life. We see that they quote the ANC Youth League on Facebook, particularly Floyd Shivambu and his friends on Facebook, calling him a yellow communist, not quite a red communist anymore, and saying that he's really become quite cowardly. Of course, he was booed by the TUT students as well, leading to this kind of greater push against Blade Nzimande.
Yeah. But I don't know if voters would necessarily still, or the majority, exercise the democratic right to choose an alternative as opposed to just, voting, be it on sentiment or be it that there isn't a formidable opposition really.
I think the funny thing is about how it would work is that everyone's going to try to keep everything quiet, from the ANC to the SSCP to COSATU. Before the elections, we'll go and make our choice at the polls, and afterwards we'll see the real kind of leadership race happening within those alliances, within those different branch structures, where people within those parties will fight for their leader. And there's a push to oust Blade from certain people within his party and other factions.
And I see in the other papers as well saying that the DA is the new black.
Yes, that was the Mail and Guardian. That was a profile that Mandy Rousseau did on their candidate for Johannesburg mayor. It is a relative unknown. His name is Mashiane, and he's quite a young guy, and he's very relatively new to the DA as well, and it's really part of the DA's attempt to kind of really change the dynamics of their party. The DA is traditionally very reluctant to talk about race because it's such a hot button issue for them. But you see them trying to grow their own timber, as they put it, and they have more and more up and coming black leaders like Lindiwe Mazibuko, like the head of their youth program, and now the person running for Johannesburg mayor. Whether he can, make an impact is yet to be seen. They're going to have a tough battle ahead of them in Johannesburg.
It's really going to be a hotly contested one.
Yeah.
Now, in the Sunday Times, five-star junket shock.
Oh dear.
49 officials went on a 2-week conference in New York, and the allegations is that didn't even really go
not really
to
a conference.
the conference and were nowhere to be seen.
I know, it's really a little bit shocking. It wasn't the largest delegation sent by any country. There were several complaints made by the South African embassy in the UN there, who were very unhappy with the situation. They made it very clear that there was very limited accreditation to this conference. And what happened is that the Minister of Correctional Services, Nosiviwe, was said to have kind of forced her way into this trip, where there was business class trips, staying at the fanciest hotels, 5-star hotels. You can imagine this is costing the taxpayer lots of money. And he's said to not have attended a single session of the conference. And apparently her department has justified this by saying that she was there for other reasons, there to meet with officials in the prison system in New York. But the presidency gave her the undertaking to go there, and understanding that she would attend the conference, and she did not.
Yeah, and just very quickly before we let you go, Jimmy Manyi announcing government's new newspaper. You're getting competition.
Yeah, it's a little bit frightening, Yeah, I know Jimmy Manyi has caught a controversy since his recent appointment, and now he's announced that it's going to be launched from next month. They're turning their Vukezenzele, their bi-monthly magazine, into a newspaper, a tabloid, 16 to 20 pages. And here's the big part. It's going to be between 1.7 and 2 million copies distributed nationwide. That is going to make it the biggest newspaper, by far in the country, distributed via government's channels. So that could, it could be interesting. What I found really interesting is Manyi accused the media of censorship, which is the reason for this paper. So
yeah,
let's see.
Exactly. We're saying thanks to the media. At least now they have their own avenue for communication.
Exactly.
But thanks so much, Vareshni, as
it's
always.
Pleasure.
Great seeing you. We're speaking about the weekend newspaper headlines, speaking to the Deputy Online for the Guardian Online, Deputy Editor Vareshni Pillay, helping us through with that one. We take a quick ad break. We'll be back in a moment.
Sunrise.